Richard Dickson got handed a book at IBM on how to conform. It was the beginning of the end of his time in corporate life. In this episode of The Pattern Seeking Entrepreneur, I sit down with Richard Dickson, founder of Play It Green, a B Corp working with over 200 organizations across 9 countries to make sustainability commercially irresistible instead of a guilt-driven checkbox. In this conversation, you'll learn how a brain wired for pattern recognition turned tree planting, mangrove restoration, and a 10% revenue giveback into a profitable business model everyone told him was impossible, and why he thinks the next decade of change depends on businesses making the right thing the easy thing. I'm Jonathan Domsky. This is The Pattern Seeking Entrepreneur. Let's go. Some entrepreneurs succeed by following the playbook, and some succeed by writing their own. This show is for the second kind. Welcome to The Pattern Seeking Entrepreneur, conversations with intense, analytical founders who have built something significant and are now redesigning the architecture of how they lead, build, and operate so that their strengths create leverage instead of friction. I'm your host, Jonathan Domsky, business and life coach, entrepreneur, and someone who has spent a career helping powerful minds build businesses that actually fit how they think. Let's get started. Richard, let's hear your story. When did you first realize that you think differently than most people in the room?
Do you know, I've always known I thought differently, but I always thought everyone was the sum total of their individual experiences, and therefore everyone did think differently. I wasn't aware of neurotypical and neurodiverse when I was young. I studied psychology and philosophy because I wanted to understand our purpose and our role and why we do what we do. And even having studied those topics, that just reinforced my personal thinking that everyone was an individual, which they are, but most people display particular traits. And I didn't know that. So I've always known I was different, but I didn't put it down to being neurodiverse. I just put it down to everyone being different.
Yeah. You said that you've always kind of known, but it didn't become obvious until you started your company. Tell me about that. Mm-hmm. What was it about starting your company that drove it home for you?
Well, it wasn't just the start in the company. I've always wanted to do what I've wanted to do and not what people have told me is the right thing to do. I worked for IBM at the age of 8. I mean, even further back, I was a prima ballerina when I was 10. I trained with the Olympic judo team at 13. So Oxford 3 years young. So I was always different. You know, I was studying with kids who were 3 years older than me. So there's the trait of always being different and not advanced, but just being able to pick things up quicker. But it was at IBM that I first realized I was different to the corporate world. And again, I thought that was down to values and my strong belief in being me. One of the managers bought me a book on how to conform, in effect. That's what the book was about.
Gave you a book on how to conform?
Because that's what IBM was about at the time. It was about everyone wore the same suit and, you know, and that literally was the last time I would ever have gone into that horrible corporate world. So I ended up in retail after uni, but I avoided the corporate till the end, and that was the end of my retail career when the corporate side came along. But this business I was told was impossible to make successful. You can't give turnover away. You can't charge so little. You can't give free education and signposting away. Well, yes, you can. You just have to work harder for it. It was all like ratified, I think is the right word. When my eldest was 17, he was sitting his A-levels and we took him he'd done the online test, I'd done the online test, and we took him for a diagnosis. And the psychologist said, "Would you like a 2-for-1?" It was very funny. He said, why have you not brought him before? And I said, well, he mirrors my childhood. And he explained, what do you mean?
Totally normal. Yeah.
Straight A student, elite athlete. These are not things you put with autism, but the pattern recognition, we were just really lucky that the pattern recognition wasn't just for esoteric things. It was for movement and body positioning and things like that as well. And so like even now I'm playing football probably more regularly than I have for years, and I'm still learning new stuff. I'm still seeing players doing things and thinking, no, I can do that.
I think the IBM story is so funny. You know, I'm an entrepreneur, as are you. All of my friends are entrepreneurs. And the idea that conformity is a virtue that needs to be taught is so alien to my world.
But that's society, isn't it? We have uniforms. We have school uniforms. We have business suits. These are all uniforms to create conformity and uniformity of behavior and thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what my book's about, or part of it. What it's about is we've got to get beyond that, because change doesn't happen with uniformity of thinking, and we need change.
Yeah. I mean, by definition, if you're an entrepreneur, you march to the beat of your own drummer, do things differently than other people. Richard, if you got to teach a master class on the one thing that your brain does best, what would it be on?
Gosh, what does my brain do best? It sees patterns. It sees the interconnectedness of things. One of my favorite phrases was about the butterfly flapping its wings. And that's always, and with the increased understanding of quantum science and the interconnectedness of everything, I think that a lot of the stuff that I used to think when I was younger that people say bonkers is probably true, and that everything is connected.
I love your curiosity. And, it sounds like it's something that you've had your entire life, just pursuing your interests, whether it was dance or martial arts. What's something that you just love right now that you know an absurd amount about that occupies your time when you're not working?
At the moment, one of my biggest special interests is the gut-brain link, and how certain foodstuffs have incredible positive impacts on your body.
So you have all this experience. You think a lot about big corporations, but you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Talk about your business. So if I ran into your ideal client at a party and I asked what you do for them, how would they describe it?
They would say they make our business better.
How so?
They make our employees prouder. They make our positive impact bigger. They help guide us on how to be a more sustainable and socially valuable business.
Mm-hmm. And could you describe the business just in a nutshell?
Yeah, we are in effect ESG out of the box. We have a subscription service to engage employees. Part of that includes nature repair, and we then give 10% of any revenue back to charity chosen by the business. So every business is engaging and educating their staff. They're having an environmentally positive impact across 5 countries, including Tanzania, Senegal, through mangrove restoration, sea kelp restoration, and agroforestry, and then obviously supporting local communities with the 10%.
Yeah. But was there a moment of clarity when you just knew this was something you had to do, or was it a slow drift towards inevitability?
No, it was. I don't process dopamine in normal ways, so I process dopamine by achieving stuff. Thus, my constant quest for knowledge. So I sat in England, you have this thing called the 11+ exam. So if you want to go to a private school at 11, you sit the exam, and if you pass the exam, you get a place at a private school. I sat at a year young, and then had to interview because I was going to be going at 10 instead of 11. And my English teacher, I said to the headmaster, "What's the reading list?" And he went, "What, for the first year?" I went, no, up to O level, which was after 5 years, the exams you sit. And I read that entire reading list in that summer holidays. We were traveling America for 6 weeks. I didn't see America. I just read every single book that was on the reading list. I remember the Amish because I bought an Amish hat, and it was really cool. I had a straw cowboy hat, and it was my prized possession. But I was described as having a voracious appetite for knowledge by my English teacher. I get dopamine from learning new things and from achieving the martial arts journey, getting in the cage after 20 years of wanting to start, being able to play football and achieve at high levels with people that are half my age. That gives me the dopamine, but it comes with hard work. Whereas buying stuff, I'm a 70s baby, so I have that understanding of delayed gratification, but my gratification doesn't come from where normal people get it from. It comes from that sort of more deeper. But now it also, my wife taught me, comes from helping people. So the business was set up to help other businesses be more successful whilst having a positive impact every day.
Talk to me about that journey of building your company, Play It Green. just from an idea into a B corporation, you work with more than 200 organizations across 9 countries. Is that right? How did it get from idea to where it is now?
So I've spent my whole life with that entrepreneurial spirit. Originally, when I finished university, I was in retail for 20 years doing training, development, culture, but there was never, however much I achieved, I was the youngest flagship manager in retail. I was the youngest person co-opted into the marketing department at head office and all sorts of stuff, but nothing did it for me. And then I got offered a job at a not-for-profit, and they were planting trees in Tanzania, educating communities in agroforestry and creating a social as well as environmental impact for these communities, basically creating economies for aid-reliant communities. All of a sudden I could work and being successful, have a huge impact on other people. And for me, that was hugely dopamine inducing. The boss was very narcissistic, and narcissists and autistic people don't mix. I didn't know that at the time, and it became quite abusive. Made them very successful. But when I left, I'd seen all the bad side of the impact to not-for-profit world, and that kind of made me think, well, I'm a conscious capitalist. I believe in transparency as a business. So why not take all of the stuff that made me uncomfortable, the smoke and mirrors and the keep your powders dry of that world, and just say, sod that. We'll set up a for-profit, show everyone everything, and not just plant trees, but create commercial benefit from sustainability, nature repair, social value, so that when a business sees we can make money from this, they do it more and more and more and more. And we've started small. We haven't advertised or marketed, but we've grown through word of mouth. And I've never been greedy. Money isn't, my dad said to me, I paid for private education and university, and you've never been interested in getting rich. But what I've now done is I've created a business where if I get rich, the positive impact and the people that I've helped along the way will be inordinately bigger than the value that I get.
Yeah. I want to talk more about that value. So I think most consumers think about sustainability and your sort of company like this. I just flew on a plane from Chicago to London. That put a lot of carbon into the atmosphere. I'm going to check the box. I'm going to donate a few dollars. I'm going to plant some trees. I'm a good person. It's like the environmental impact never happened, but you want more than that. Like, tell me about the shift from seeing tree planting or nature repair as a standalone action to building a broader model around education, verified impact, social value, reporting, and revenue-linked sustainability.
So I was very lucky in the not-for-profit journey to travel most of the world, meet sustainability and business leaders. And there was a common thread that I started to see, a pattern that I recognized, that tree planting and nature repair, had a bad rap because it wasn't very transparent and it could be used for greenwashing, but wasn't the answer. The answer was culture change, behavior change, doing things differently. This is what I spent 20 years in retail doing. And I'd also realized that conscious capitalism meant that businesses had to have an impact before the shareholder was served. So I wanted to create a business model that met all three. However, to create change, things have to be simple. They have to be achievable, attainable. They might be a stretch, but they can't be seen as impossible or really difficult because people just won't engage. So I thought, well, I need to create 3 pillars, and that became the 3-step solution to climate change, which is reduce, repair, and re-give. Reduce footprints through tips, education, and signposting to the people that will help you. Because again, it's not about me and my business being the answer to everything. It's about creating value for our partners that do footprint reporting and sustainable menu development and things like that, that we can signpost for free to them. So they win. Our customers win because they're suddenly getting vetted experts that cost them less because our finder's fee is knocked off the charge because we don't take a finder's fee. But then what happens is they then introduce us to their clients, and we have this symbiotic relationship, which is just like nature, where we see with the mangrove restoration we do, the insects and the shellfish and things return to there first, and the birds return because there's a food source. And so you have this symbiosis. This is what we're trying to create in business.
Richard, you said that for yourself, like you never gotten that dopamine hit from consumerism, that it's from building things. And you've talked about needing to shift as a society, to shift that dopamine trigger away from consumerism. With the work that you do, what sort of mass consumer behavior changes are necessary, or is this something that could all be done at the corporate level?
No, it needs to be done top and bottom. Societal change doesn't happen in one direction. It has to be in both. So you show them a different path. You show them. Our business started to aim just at individuals. The business came because businesses started to sign up. They saw the value for their staff and then wanted to do more. That's the natural journey. When you start to understand something and see the good, you want to do more of it. And we, on a Friday, publish a weekly tip that takes one thing in a household that is sustainably an issue. For example, bathroom plastic. We'll talk about the history. We'll talk about the environmental impact. We create the dopamine, we create the cortisol, that whole psychological journey. And then the end of the article is 3 brands that we think are great that solve the problem. And then we contact the brands and get discount codes off them. So we create what I call conscious consumers. So people, before they buy, start to think, well, is there an alternative that I can get that's more sustainable? And what happens is, as people start to buy more and more sustainable products, the retailers start to realize, and that B Corp aisle or that sustainability aisle gets bigger and bigger. This is happening.
We all make our individual choices, and these choices are part of a system. And you've described, seeing sustainability as a commercial system, not just a side product, that you could look at, whether you're checking into a hotel or, in an airport, and you could just immediately see, how the money already moves. Most people can't do that. When did you realize this wasn't just a perspective, but this was a cognitive difference in how you see the world?
Do you know, I've never really thought about it, that most people can't do that. I always thought, I'm not that special. Everyone must see this. And quite often I'll think, well, I'm just lucky. Because as a neurodiverse person, you've always felt like a bit of an outsider. And I think that's partly why the dopamine triggers happen when I do something that other people are like, wow, how have you managed that? But then I will go, well, I've done it. So what's next? That's my brain. So,
it's such a common experience that when you think differently and you're in the context, of course, of your family and the school, because that's where your kids are, it's just the wrong context to think differently. But when you could channel and harness those gifts, I tell my kids, like, anyone you've ever heard of who's accomplished something, who started something great, by definition, they think differently than other people. They didn't read the IBM book on how to conform. They did something different, and that's what changes the world. I want to talk more about the systems that we live in. Richard, you told me, I wish more people would ask, how do we make doing the right thing easier to adopt commercially? That it doesn't feel like I'm making a sacrifice or like I'm doing this to be a good person, but it's just the natural, easy choice to make. You've been answering that question through your work for years. What's your answer?
You can't do it overnight. It takes years and years and years and thousands of touch points and education, but also the systems that run society need to help and facilitate. And at the moment they don't. They've been commandeered by the profit monger. And don't get me wrong, I am still a capitalist. I'm just a conscious capitalist. What does society do at the moment? It teaches people to conform. It teaches people that the quest for wealth is the most important, the quest for property and accumulation of things. What it doesn't teach is helping others and the quest for bettering mankind. And that's gone. It's disappeared. And there's just a small minority, but we could have everyone doing that. The human species is incredible, but education's gone awry. It's a system that was designed for factory workers at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, but we could change very quickly. Education's a massive system to change. People don't learn the same. We know there's a number of different learning patterns now. Why is schools being taught in classrooms? Why are the sciences separated when they are all interlinked? Why are we teaching them differently? There's all sorts of things we can change there.
Richard, who in your world is allowed to tell you that you're wrong?
Why? Anyone. In fact,
Yeah.
I've spent my whole life wanting to learn. So if I do something and someone says you're wrong, my next question is why? And I am very open to changing. That's one thing about me is whilst I can be very set in my ways and I love routines because routines are things that I can then improve by micro adjustments.
Who do you surround yourself with? Who's on your team? And do they compliment you or do they amplify you?
I've surrounded myself with people that are incredibly good at their jobs. The partnerships and relationships have all been symbiotic. So there's never been, I've had no transactional relationships. And if relationships became transactional, I've kind of knocked them on the head. So the marketing agency we were working with, we don't work with anymore. And we work with a company that understands us better and understands our values and shares those values. Individuals, very well respected, but not conformist. And those are the people that I feel you have to surround yourself with. And they will challenge me. They won't just agree with anything. And I love that as well, because that's how we grow. There's a great saying from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I did judo as a kid. I have a lot of the throws and the movements and stuff are part of my reflex. So Bruce Lee said, what is learned becomes unlearned. So you practice, and it just becomes second nature. However, when I started mixed martial arts, I was great getting people to the floor because judo's about throws and things. But then I'd be rolling with people that had trained in jiu-jitsu and I'd lose so many times and I'd be so angry with myself. And the teacher said, you've got to change your attitude. And I went, what do you mean? He said, it's win or learn. And he went, explain. And he said, when you beat someone, what have you learned? That you can beat them. When you lose and you ask them how they beat you, what have you learned? How not to lose. And I took that into business life. I took that into my football coaching. So I'd tell the kids when they lost a game, this is great. And they'd be like, what are you talking about? We just lost. And I went, no, because it's a far better opportunity for us to grow as a team.
Yeah.
And when you change that lens, the whole world changes.
Yeah. Win or learn. I love that. Richard, you used the phrase intensity is only useful if people can follow it. It's a hard-won insight. What did you break? A relationship, a hire, a partnership that taught you that?
I think that my whole life, people have struggled with my intensity. And so, yeah, I think it's needed. I think that a lot of people never even develop a sense of intensity at all and just go through life going, and just on the treadmill. And I couldn't stand it. It can be a lonely path, I think, sometimes. I've become very aware. Like you go to parties and you see people with big social groups and it's like, yeah, that's not for me. I wouldn't like that because I wouldn't be able to nurture that bigger social group anyway. But the counter to that is without that intensity, you don't achieve.
Sure.
I used to hate, not myself, but I used to hate feeling different. But when you take stock, I actually feel very lucky. I'm lucky in a way that I had the intelligence to be able to mask from a very early age. So I could fit in. It would, like with IBM, I drove a city, I bought a Beetle. I used to go wearing red braces and do things that were different. And I'm the same with my clothes, always wear things that are slightly different. My wife would go, oh, I'm not sure you should wear that. And I'm like, yeah, I want to. I like it. I like the way it feels. I like the way it looks. I think, like you said, the people that create the greatest change generally don't think the same. It's the same in sports. If I look at the greatest warriors, the greatest footballers, they are all different. They're all more intense.
Yeah.
Messi, De Bruyne, some of the greatest footballers, without doubt autistic.
When you think about the people that you care most about in this world, your children, your wife, your partner, your old partner in business, employees, does your intensity ask anything of them that sometimes isn't fair?
Yes, 100%. Particularly my wife. I think she probably comes off the worst of everyone. I'm constantly looking for patterns. I'm constantly feeling anxious when patterns change. I sometimes struggle with that and try and fill the gaps and not always with correct answers. So yeah, I think I struggle to express emotion in words. So sometimes that can be quite difficult as well.
How do you
But
navigate that with her?
it's hard sometimes. It's funny because I am I'm a hyper empath. So I cry at movies. If someone's in a bad mood, I'm instantly in their mood, and it's really unhealthy sometimes. I can't help it. I think sometimes she just gets, God, not again. We're
Yeah.
watching a movie and I'm floods of tears.
Yeah.
But, that's just life.
We should all be grateful for the people who love
Correct.
us and support us.
100%. And I am super lucky that when Joe and I were diagnosed, my wife bought in completely and did the research, and she will tell, like, I'll say, oh, I'm feeling like this. And she'll go, oh, this is because of X, like rejection sensitivity dysphoria. I knew nothing about that. And that's one of the toughest issues for me to deal with in business. I'll have a great meeting. Someone will be really positive. I'll send an email that they've requested. I'll follow up. They don't reply. I'm like, what for done? Why don't they like me? And
Sure.
it's
Immediately go to the negative.
Yeah.
Richard, this brain of yours that thinks so differently, what's it made possible in your business that you think a more conventional thinker just wouldn't have been able to pull off?
I think the 10% of turnover giving away, I mean, it was always part of the business plan. I don't think a neurotypical person would even think of that. I was told it's impossible. You can't give 10% of turnover away and make a good, profitable business. No one does that. Well, no one does yet, but now we do. And we made a profit last year. So it is possible. And again, we've taken this really slowly. We haven't looked to scale yet, but that's the goal now, is everything works. The roots and the early growth, the shoots of growth are there. And now we basically brought people in to help nurture that. And we will start to tell the storytelling, because stories are the way to change the world. We spent thousands and thousands of years of evolution without the written word, but with the stories, and the hunters would come back from the hunt and tell the stories around the fire, and the young kids would live the hunt. And we have a brain that can create emotions from other people's work. And that is how you create the change that's needed.
Yeah. So I find you fascinating that you're clearly mission motivated, but you also see the commercial side of things. What do you think that the stereotypical environmental do-gooder misses?
They are ego driven. They want to feel important. They use language that creates this exclusivity of sustainability. It's almost like they are brilliant at what they do, but do not understand business. They don't understand human behavior. So they're trying to create change with people that aren't ready or don't understand it. And if you ask someone to do something and they don't understand the reason why would they do it? But I mean, my pitch used to be, what do you do? Oh, well, we educate people in sustainability. We plant trees and we give to charity, because that's what we do. But I don't say that anymore. I say, we help you attract and retain better staff. We increase your productivity as a business. We increase your profit line. We attract new customers. Well, how do you do that? And then we explain. And all of a sudden, when the business hears that, well, of course I want that. And we've got the proof. And we have a company that used us on their recruitment page, and the people that were applying for jobs got better.
Yeah.
So
it happens so often that when you think differently, there's a gap between how something lands in your head and how it lands in the room. That was one example of something that you changed over the years. What's something you're still figuring out right now?
I mean, AI's helped me massively with figuring stuff out, because I now have a muse that's been programmed by neurotypical people. So it understands that I'm not neurotypical, and that's been a big part of our conversations. But I think the biggest thing for me is translating my passion, because it's very much internalized. I can feel really animated and really passionate and come across as quite flat. Yeah. And I noticed that watching podcasts back and things, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, but to come across animated, you have to go over the top, and that then appears normal. And I can't do that. That's just not
You feel like you're shouting and someone else could barely hear you. Yeah.
And my whole childhood was stop tapping, modulate your voice. And that was all I remember as a kid. So yeah, I've tried not to. And then just, that's how your masking happens, and you just fall into that normally, don't you? It becomes habit.
Well, so there's a flip side to this difficulty in expressing your passion. Is that the work that you do, it's so important to you. It feels so urgent, and it can be frustrating when other people don't seem to care about it. How do you keep that conviction without letting frustration get in the way?
One of the things is we have an impact page on our website that shows what we've planted and how much CO2 it's absorbed, how much we raise for charity, and the employment data. I go to that. I refresh it every morning, and that literally keeps me on point for the mission, however hard things get. And I also know that people don't go at my speed.
Yeah.
Both me and my eldest, we go at different speeds to other people. He's far more aware, very lucky to have been diagnosed at a young enough age that he's, understands himself and hasn't had the negative baggage that comes with not understanding. But he's and doing psychology and cognitive neuroscience at uni as well. So has this innate understanding of the brain.
Special incentive to figure stuff out.
Correct.
Yeah. Richard, is there a part of your business that you just do out of guilt or habit rather than choice? Something that you feel like you have to do it, but it goes against your grain?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the whole thing about the business is it was built around what I thought we needed, which was the education, which I love to write content. I hate to sell, but then again, I don't generally sell anymore. It's changed from selling to problem solving and offering solutions that work. I try and get rid of bad habits. My whole ethos is wake up a little and do a little bit better every day. And it doesn't matter even if it's the tiniest bit better. You've learned one new word or done one thing, but incrementally over time, it makes such a difference. And we've just got to stop looking at that short term. I remember almost every moment of my life.
Where do you feel most nourished, most alive in your business?
When I get calls from customers saying they've had a win, genuinely, whether it's we've won a tender, we've got 3 customers that have had 7-figure investment and we've played a part in it. We've had so many customers that have had increased sales or won tenders or recruited better staff. It's helping others. It's proving the point that doing good is commercially valuable.
What do you think that people misunderstand about you? What do they get wrong about you?
I think people think I'm weird. I think they think I've got weird ideas. It's just that a lot of people aren't. I think I'm ahead of the game, and a lot of people aren't ready for it yet. When Apple was everything, I bought an Android phone. Why did I buy it? Because it was open source. It was easier to adjust. It was not a closed ecosystem where the vendor had control over what I did, because that's wrong. My really close friends get me because they spend more time with me and they listen to me. But I think that other people don't. And I think I see it with other autistic people as well, that they present differently and people maybe can't put their finger on it. Like when we play football, if there's a foul and someone doesn't give it, I have to say, oh, come on, let's be honest. And it can annoy people, but that's just the way I am. I have to, everything has to be good and right. And I have a strong set of values. My neurotypical youngest has inherited my empathy and my strong values. Even if you've got strong values, black and white's the enemy of reality.
Yeah, it's wise. Richard, one of my favorite things to hear from people is their vision for the future. And we're having this conversation right now on June 18th, 2026. But if we were to talk again on June 18th, 2027, and you are just thriving in every aspect of life, your business, your finances, your personal relationships, your health, your friends, your faith, all that stuff. Looking back, what made this such a spectacular year?
Do you know, I think every year is spectacular. I'm very lucky to be able to, not in the moment, but look back and be thankful. But I think my goal for the next 12 months is to plant 1 million nature-based solutions in a year. That's the goal, because of the positive impact on people and planet. That's the spectacular for me, is scaling the positive impact on other people's lives, whether it's through making their business look more attractive, whether it's through the agroforestry businesses that are being set up in Senegal, or the mangrove restoration that's happening in Kenya. They're all having positive impacts on people. And there's trophic cascades. If you plant mangroves, you support the fishing communities in that area as well.
Just to read back what I heard, it's June 18th, 2027, and I declare the possibility that this year and every year is spectacular. I look back and I'm thankful. I planted 1 million nature-based solutions, scaling improvements in people's lives. Beautiful. Is there anything that's in the way of that happening
Just
this next 12 months? Yeah?
Me.
What part are you?
The naysayer, the you're not good enough, because I've been told my whole life that's not the way to do it. You're wrong. Don't do it that way. Stop tapping your feet.
Yeah.
All of that. And I know I can be difficult to be around, but I'm also an inherently good and honest and open person. And that, for me, is what society is about: being honest and open and moral and ethical and caring about others.
Yeah.
And not just caring about yourself.
Comes through so strongly, Richard, and it's just such a tragedy, and I hear it all the time, that people who think a little differently, are a little more sensitive, who have ideas about justice and compassion and about wanting the world to be better than it is, we start our lives in school where conformity is the virtue, and it just creates this doubt that inhibits us when we get into the world, and those values are actually embraced by a lot of people. It's a struggle to overcome. Let's switch roles for a minute. Why don't you be the question asker? I'll be the question answerer. Is there anything that you'd like to ask me?
How do you not find what you do overwhelming, the community that you're building and the podcast? Because one of the things I've found, obviously being in the WhatsApp group with the community, is I can find lots of the stuff overwhelming, because a message will come in and it's not just a message. It's a piece of information that I have to then go and research and digest. And so it takes more than, it's not just I read that message, that's gone now. So it can become overwhelming, and it's a new set of things to do, that's new processes to implement and so on.
Yeah. Leading up to launching the community, and so you're referring to this private WhatsApp community that I've created for just intense pattern-seeking entrepreneurs who think differently. The 3 months leading up to it, where I was stretched really thin. It was a tremendous period of personal growth, of working and learning. I launched this podcast, and I'd never done podcasting before, so of course, like any normal person, I read 5 books on on podcasting, and learned all this stuff. And I was launching the communities. I read 5 books on how to build and nurture communities. And at the same time, I was reaching out to, over the course of about 3 months, about 100 people on LinkedIn. You were one of them, who I thought, based on their profiles, might be a good fit. And, just because someone's profile looks like it's a good fit doesn't mean they're actually a good fit. Only about 1 in 3 people who I spoke with did I think like, oh yeah, that's someone who I want in this community. And I find learning exhilarating. I find it very satisfying. But I was having between 5 and 7 calls each day, lasting between 30 and 90 minutes. And that's just a lot of talking for an introvert like me. And at the end of the day, I would just be exhausted, and I would feel this hollow discomfort, like at the top of my sternum. And I just wouldn't be good for anything. I was just spent. I was stretched thin. I was working a lot harder than I had the capacity for, because I felt like I was on a mission. I needed to get to a certain point to be able to launch the community. I didn't want to launch it with 3 people. And then everybody's like, well, what are we doing here? Am I in the right place? Like, it needed to get to critical mass, I felt, before we could start. And I didn't want people who I talked to 3 months ago then losing interest and, having to start all over again. So I was really pushing myself. to lead up to that point. And it's funny, you mentioned the Amish during your trip to America when you were a boy. Memorial Day weekend, just a month ago, my anniversary of my commitment ceremony with my wife. And we were both, each in our own way, just feeling really stretched thin, that we needed to recharge. And we decided to spend 4 days in Amish country. So there's no Wi-Fi, there's no cellular service. Wow, for those 4 days, it's exactly what we needed. I think most people feel most fulfilled when we're contributing. That's the whole story that you were telling me about how to contribute to our planet, to the people we love, to make a better society. Running the group is easy. I find that to be nourishing and fun, and to build a community, to attract people to a community, especially people who, don't have a lot of places where we feel that, we fully belong and we don't have to explain ourselves, that people just get it. I find that very nourishing. The lead up was stretching myself too thin. And one of the people I talked to, she's a member of the group. I actually interviewed her on this podcast, Erin Anatavi. I'd reached out to her on LinkedIn, just like I reached out to you. And she said she only takes 3 calls a week. She has some energy management issues, which I certainly have as well. And I heard that. And at first I was just grateful that I made the cut, that I was one of the 3. But as soon as I heard that, I'm like, yeah, I'm taking on too much. I'm taking on more calls each day than is sustainable for me. And I committed that when I got back from that Memorial Day weekend in Amish country, I was just going to limit the number of my calls each day. So it's all about energy management.
Agreed.
But the community itself I find very nourishing. Richard, what do you wish people listening to this knew about you and your company?
How good we are for people, planet, and their business. Because if they did, everyone would join. And that's the goal. When I first set up, it was the blue sky thinking, where do we want to be? We want to be a household name, recognizable for helping people and planet and doing business in a new and evolved way. This business is about helping people's lives and well-being.
Yeah. How should people get in touch with you, learn about you, follow your work?
LinkedIn is always the best. Richard Dickson, Play It Green on LinkedIn. I will always respond to messages. richard@playitgreen.com is my email.
Fantastic. Richard Dickson, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom,
Jonathan.
Your heart, your story. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for listening to The Pattern-Seeking Entrepreneur. If today's conversation resonated, especially if you are a founder who has built something meaningful, but senses that the structure around you no longer fully fits how your mind works, I would love to hear from you at untangled-coaching.com. Don't forget the dash. If this episode was valuable, the best thing you could do is to share it with one founder who needs to hear this message. That's how the show grows, one person at a time. Until next time, may your work ahead fit you better than anything you've ever built before. And if today's conversation felt like it was speaking directly to you, it probably was. I'd love for you to reach out.